meeting this morning. Thank you for coming out. Did you, everybody sign in? The annual membership meeting for the Southeast Chicago Historical Society was held on Saturday, March 31st, 2012 at 11:10 in the Calumet Park Fieldhouse with 16 members signing in. The secretary notes were read from the meeting of 2011 and approved by Ellen Seeker and D. Dorgan. Treasurer Carolyn Mulek reported treasury activity during the past year on an overhead projector for easy viewing. The report included profit from the 2011 dinner and the museum expenses for supplies. Jack Dorgan volunteered to be a member of the nominating committee along with John Novak and Lucille Vaskevich. John Novak submitted the selection of officers for the 2012-13 season as follows. Brian Janetti, President, Lucille Vaskevich, Vice President, Carolyn Muzak, Treasurer, and Gloria Novak, Secretary. Having no nominations, the slate was approved by the membership. Jim Osterelos offered a suggested plan concerning dues payment. Monies paid at the beginning of the year to cover the entire year. Monies paid after June 30th to cover 1/2 year with the possibility of payment of $15 for the balance of the year and upcoming year. Motion made by Rod and Clance to accept the proposal, which was agreed by the membership present. Rod announced the theme to be used at the dinner on May 20th to be Chicago's Southeast Side Goes to the Movies. We will be highlighted by photos of the past theaters. Jim Kukowski raised a question concerning grants available from outside organizations, which resulted in several questions such as who are they, who would carry the ball, and what is step number 1. Meeting adjourned at 12:20 by Kevin Murphy and Jack Dorgan. Respectfully submitted, Gloria Novak, Secretary.
If there are no corrections or additions, will someone accept the minutes as read? Approval? Okay. Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, minutes have been approved.
Ryan.
Now the important part of the program, the Treasurer's Report. I'm okay.
Which one do you want first?
The report. We're joining the 20th century now. We're using the computer instead of the overhead transparencies. It was a good year because our income exceeded our expenses. That's always good. As you can see, one of the big sources of income is membership dues, which were $1,090. We got a fair number of donations, $691. We're also making money allowing people to reproduce items in our collection and getting permissions for putting materials, so that's $554. And then our ticket sales were another source of income, $1,540. Expenses are pretty steady. We're an institutional member of the Alumni Association of Museums. The Secretary of State requires a $10 fee with our annual report. It's turned in every May. We pay a little bit of sales and use tax to the state, $41.98. Our expense for printing the program for the dinner is almost the same every year, $72. Our dinner was a little bit more expensive this year, and I'll get into that in the report on the dinner. Postage is something that keeps going up, $495. We were able to make some economies in printing the newsletter by supplies are fairly steady, almost $400. A little bit of money spent on toner and so forth for the photocopier, $65.97. Miscellaneous museum supplies, anything from mailing labels to page protectors, that sort of thing, $46.89. We took out, oh, I forgot to put that figure in there, for the East Side Chamber program book. That was an ad of $40. It is missing on here. But it's $40 to have an ad in their book. Some of the officers were given tickets for the East Side Chamber dinner at $35 each. We sent a memorial arrangement in honor of Frank Stanley for $60.95. We spent $159.65 on books for the museum collection and purchased an Acme Steel video for $20 for the collection. So total expenses, $36.50.29. And in the treasury, as of our February bank statement, $37,810.60. And I will make a correction to that item. I left out $40 for the program ad. I'll send the officers an update.
Will someone make a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
I want to ask if anybody has any questions.
Do you have any questions about the expenses and income?
Some of these things in my presentation, you'll get a little better idea of where some of those things got spent.
There are no questions. Nobody can question you. So is there a motion on the floor to accept the treasurer's report? John? Colette? Seconded? Dee? And all in favor?
Thank you. Okay.
Treasurer's report accepted.
You want the dinner?
The dinner, yeah. This is just a breakdown on our expenses for this year. As you may recall, we had to do some last-minute scrambling for a spot, and we were lucky enough to use the space at the Zone. We did have a different caterer who charged a little bit more, so you can see it cost us $236.50. But we'll be back at the Crowbar this year, and we'll hear more about that later. And then finally, here's a slide with our dinners since 2000. And most of the time we've shown a profit. Again, this year was one of the times when we had a cost. But you can see it's pretty steady. And luckily, hopefully this year we won't have a lot of costs.
I guess I was premature. I know you were finished.
Oh, yeah, that's all I have. Any questions about expenses for the dinners?
All the dinner tickets?
That's on the agenda. I think that's going to be brought up.
Do we have any motion to accept the treasurer's report? John and Dee. Okay. All in favor? No objections? Okay. Thank you. Someone.
All right, why don't you sit on the side there, and then that won't be in your eyes.
The membership report, we have a total of 31 life members, and we just added 3 more new members, so we're up to 128 regular members, and so on that basis, we're doing fine. Want to remind everybody about the dues, but the people that are here, I'm sure, are all paid up. Now, John Novak, first of all, John will do is on the nominating committee. I'd have to say that Lucille Vasilevich is not going to be here, but she has accepted the vice presidency for the coming year. So,
Are there any nominations on the floor? I make a motion we retain the officers for this past year.
motion to retain the officers, although
I thought you were volunteering to become
here
a
is I haven't heard any, one that may throw their hat in the ring, so to speak. No, silence, okay. John, so I'll continue for,
Request is, are there any motions on the floor for officers? With none, we'll go with Barney as president, Barney Janicki as president, Lucille Peskevich as vice president, Carolyn Mueck as treasurer, Gloria Novak as secretary.
okay, I guess there aren't any challenges, so, it's unanimous.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Okay. I guess case is closed. So, but with the help of the members, I'm sure that it's going to make life easier for us.
Can I just make a comment? I was looking through old newsletters and I came across an item where the original bylaws allowed a person to serve in office for only 2 years, and then they had to get out of office. So those were changed. And,
You change those officially,
those were changed before my time, a long time ago. But I was looking back at original newsletters and I'm looking and saying, well, geez, why are we electing new presidents every 2 years? And they care what these people were doing, and I came across a motion about changing bylaws in the newsletter. I'll mention where that came from a bit.
I suppose that the president's report, the only thing I can say is that I think the membership for the election of same officers, we have an excellent group. And of course, the treasurer is just as honest as can be, and so do a great job. And of course, I gave a report on the number of memberships that we have, the life members and the regular members, and and we seem to be picking up more new members. We've lost a couple of them, particularly Frank Stanley, who was so dear to us, and which is one of the originating founders, and he certainly has been missed. But in a way, Rob has joined us here at the museum and the society, so thank you, Rob. Oh, one thing I have to mention is that, we've been pretty fortunate in being here, cost-free. We never had to pay for heat, whatever. No rent, no electricity. But they approached us about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, that Park is requesting us to buy insurance, liability insurance for the museum. Why that came about, I don't know. I suppose because of their budget, they're short of funds. So we're trying to get some insurance here. I think we'll be able to handle it. It's going to be. We're hoping to get under $500 a year. But I think we'll still be able to handle it, considering we don't have any raffles or anything of that nature. So, yes, Gloria?
I think we would like to make the motion, we officers and member volunteers, that the price of the dinner tickets be raised from $18 to $20, $2 more, to help cover and sustain the difference in case we have to buy insurance.
Yeah, I don't think it's getting anything from there because it's,
Well, can we bring that up to a legal vote?
it's still a very nominal cost, and I don't think anybody else does it any cheaper. Also, the members' dues of $10, I don't think you can get that kind of a bargain anyplace.
I don't know that that requires a motion. I mean, to set the price of the tickets. I think just to let people know, that's fine, but I don't think it needs a motion.
Anybody
No,
here?
because I think if the board decides that that's what the fee is,
Okay.
I don't think the membership needs to vote on it.
Yeah, and just in terms of the insurance, It's liability insurance. It doesn't cover any of the property. If, God forbid, we had a fire, stuff would be lost. But insuring the property is ridiculous, on top of which it would have to be, somebody would have to come in and do an evaluation and a cost assessment, all that kind of stuff. This is confusing enough. The Park District wants liability insurance. We approached the Aldermen's Office and asked why we had to have liability. They are still working on it, but we're kind of waiting for an answer. We went out and got several quotes for insurance, which ranged anywhere from, I think there were 500, 700, and 300. So the 300 looked best to us. We have to go with it. That's kind of what we're going to do, and it would actually be through Gyre's insurance.
Excuse me, finish it.
Pardon me?
Finish. Are you finished?
Yeah.
Is this insurance strictly inside the museum, or is this entrance to and from?
I mean, it's a liability policy, and there's still some questions on it. As I understand it, the policy's supposed to be taken out in the name of the Park District, but we're paying for it. So that's something that we still have to kind of clarify. And like I say, we're hoping that the Aldermen's Office gives us some kind of advice on what we have to do and what we don't have to do.
Well, in any event, it looks like we may have to do it. We can certainly afford it. As you can see, we've got more than $35,000.
And I think we'll just accept what they say because they've been more than generous to us, it hasn't cost us, we don't have any expenses that way.
I mean, that's the idea. It's obviously, it's lawyers' insurance.
Right.
If somebody gets sued, Park District's covered.
So this is the first time we've been approached with that. I understand that the train setup downstairs, they've had insurance for about a year now, so I think we'll be able to handle that, and we won't give them any static. Whatever they say, okay. Are there any questions or some advice? We can use some advice.
Anybody sell insurance?
Yeah, who's going to be insurance people?
Well, we went to the insurance that the model railroad gets. We went to Bufano's on the east side, and we went to Gyre's. And those were the 3 quotes that we received.
Okay, with that, I'm sure everybody's anxious to see what Rod's presentation. I am. It's always so interesting. So, Rod?
Most of the information up there on the President's report, I thought would be best covered through a presentation. The upcoming events, let me just mention those before we move on. April 13th, there is a flyer on piano, rough cut screening of Exit 0, which is a film documentary related to the closing of Wisconsin Steel. And there's a book that came out about 6 weeks ago called Exit 0. It's about the experiences of the Wally family from the east side. And the documentary will be on the 13th. At the field, it's an all-day event. It starts out with a screening, follows with a question and answer period, and then there are a couple of panel discussions in the afternoon related to closing steel mills, deindustrialization, and all those wonderful topics. Brochure over there has a schedule for the day. Admission to the museum is free, but you'll have to pay for parking. And I'm not exactly sure how much that is. April 19th, as part of our partnership with Calumet Heritage Partnership, CHP, everybody talks in initials nowadays, we are doing a presentation at the Midwest Archives Conference in Indianapolis, and I will be presenting basically what our museum is all about, what we collect, what we have in our collections, and it's a pretty high-profile group, and it's the type of group who makes references to other people on where to go for information. So it should be a good thing for us. The 19th is our annual dinner. 25th, 26th, the Memorial Day Massacre. I assume that's happening again, although I haven't heard anything official. But they have a commemoration every year. Last year was a real big one because it was the 75th anniversary. This will be the 76th. I assume they're going to have it again. We'll, if we get any more information, we'll put it out there.
Could I add one event before you start the
Right.
presentation? I'd just like to invite everyone to Sacred Heart Parish at 96th and Exchange. this year we're celebrating our centennial. The church was founded in 1913. And as part of the celebration, on April 20th and 21st, we're having a temporary display called the Walk Down Memory Lane. And it's at the church hall at 96th and Exchange. It'll be on Saturday the 20th from 3 to 7 p.m. and on Sunday the 21st from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And a lot of the materials that will be on display were things we copied from the collection here. And it's a lot of local interest. You will probably recognize some of your former neighbors. And we'll have displays about the building of the new church, which was built in 1963. We've got things like pictures of classes from Sacred Heart Parish. My sisters and I are displaying our first communion dresses, which are extremely antique at this point, but they're in one piece. And there'll be some other artifacts from the old building. So if you haven't, had some free time that weekend, you're certainly welcome to come. No admission. We will be asking for donations naturally, but it'll be a nice display that literally will be a walk down memory lane. There will be displays on tables, and you just walk through and look at the history of Sacred Heart Parish. And, of course, that involves South Chicago as well. So.
If you send me that information early next week, I'll put it in our newsletter.
Oh, excellent. I will.
Did you invite Father Ivan?
I think he is. Yeah, I think so. I think he's aware of it, and I'll make sure that.
Okay.
So we're looking forward to it.
What are those dates again?
April 20th and 21st. It's a Saturday and Sunday, so a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday morning and afternoon. And after we take the displays down, we'll store them. They'll become part of the parish archives.
Presentation, and normally I do a short presentation on some topic that seems of interest, and this year I thought that we combined what we've done over the last year with the presentation, so that if any of you have questions, what the hell do they do in that museum, we'll give you an idea. It'll also give you a little bit of an idea of some of the things we have in our collection. So this kind of focuses on the last year in the museum. One thing I wanted to point out that in October 2001, shortly after Joe Mulek became our president, Joe asked me to take over the newsletter as a temporary editor until he got someone. Well, it's more than 10 years. I'm still the editor. Anybody wants it, you can have it. And it has come out, and one of the things Joe was concerned about was that, the newsletter was getting a little bit sporadic. It kind of came out when anybody got around to doing it. But since that time, we have published 4 times a year. And we will be publishing in another couple of weeks our April newsletter. Volunteers, please. One thing that we just recently did was we went through and we did an index of all our past newsletters. Every newsletter that was printed, and this is just a sample. Okay, so we have basically a paragraph like this for every newsletter going back to 1986, I think, perhaps, when they first started, and a brief summary of what's in there. What that enables is that you can search it. So if you're looking for a topic, and I swear I've used it 24 times since I learned how to do it. When I was looking for information, I could go back to a particular newsletter. Now, our newsletters are online up to sometime in 2010, at which point we lost contact with Northeastern Illinois University, but they are still up. There's still a ton of newsletters up there with information. So you can search, for example, if I put in, I'm searching for information on the Bonivers, the football team. It'll come up about 5 lines down. It says 1961 Boniver team photo. It'll highlight that. It'll highlight anything related. It'll highlight the word Boniver. So we can search by word. So it's only as good as whoever does this index. That's me. And it kind of summarizes the newsletter, but it is done. And as I say, it's proven to be very helpful. This is another item that is indexed. It's large albums. Years ago, one of the things that the volunteers at the museum were doing were when items came in, they put them in these huge albums. And I'm talking about albums that are probably 24 by 30 inches. They're very large, they're very unwieldy, but they've got real treasures inside of them. Problem is, they were never indexed, they were never cataloged, so it was real hit or miss. You want to find an article, well, I know it's in one of those large albums. If you got 20 hours to sit down and go through, 8 large albums, you might find it. Well, we do have a catalog of what's in there, and this is what it looks like. Now, it's 40 pages long, but it's searchable. So if you know there's an article in there about a particular topic, you can search for it. You can search under Eastside Labor Day celebration and find it. So these are some search things that we've just kind of learned how to do. Meaning,
Is this on the computer?
It's digital. It's not online, but it is on a computer. This is on a computer, and you can search it. And that means any file which we have, you can search. The
You
South.
type in something and it highlights like the other one.
Right.
Or you have to go through each page.
Right. As long as when you did the index, you included. So I say, it's only as good as your index. And if you misspell or do a typo in the index, it won't pick that up. So you're constantly wanting to look at it. The items that I have got indexed, which have proven very useful, are the large albums, the large panels. There's a huge photo display right-hand side as you walk in the museum. All those panels are indexed. So if you're looking for a particular picture within that set, you can find it. The Southeast Project is indexed by accession, but it's only a very one-line description. That, we could go through and flush that out a little bit and make it better in our spare time. But it is searchable now. It's useful, can be better, but it works so far.
What about the daily Calumet?
Not indexed. Anybody wants to sit down and index 20 years of daily Calumet? We constantly tell people, if you're looking for information in the daily Cal, if you got a date, okay. If you don't, you got to have a lot of time. Guy came in the museum the other day. He had a list of 3 publications. Okay, he was looking for a particular article. He says, do you have the daily Calumet from, September 10th, 1975? I says, yes, we do. I pulled the book out, laid it down. I says, if you want to make a copy, you can take a photograph of it, because we don't allow the daily Calumets to go on the copying machine because they're too big and they're too fragile. Pulled out a camera, took a picture, left the museum. Got exactly what he wanted, but he knew exactly what he wanted, and he had a date. Now, he also had a couple of other papers. I think he had the Daily News, and he had one other one, which he had to go to other libraries for. But if you have a date, the Cal's great. If you don't, it's a lot of fun to look through.
Ron,
And that would be a great project, but it'll take forever.
did I understand correctly, you were saying you have the newsletter online through 2010?
Yeah.
What about from 2010 to the present? Do you have another place you're putting it? Or?
No, I mean, I have them digitally, but we don't have any place we're posting them. That could perhaps relate to something else I'm going to talk about a little later. Right now, we're stuck with that Northeastern website, which fortunately, no one at Northeastern has realized is there, I think. They just leave it there. Okay, so these are searchable files right now. Our video collection, which Joanne spent a lot of time indexing our videos, because we got videos from all kinds of different projects that went on, and they're searchable. So for example, if you want to know if we have an interview of a particular individual, without looking through 100 video tapes, you can find it. And that's another thing that comes up. Vertical files, which Joanne refers to as the aura files, are also being indexed. 100 plus pages, I believe.
So far.
Yeah, and she's not finished yet. But those vertical files in the museum, again, one of those things that's got treasures, but you can't find them. So if we get them indexed and done digitally, now we can search it. And like I say, it's so easy. I can't believe I was so stupid not to be able to do it. And then all of a sudden, Joanne made a suggestion, and I looked into it, and bingo, figured out how to do it. Boy, am I smart. Okay, something we've been working on is World War II honor roll pictures. Now, the honor rolls are monuments, small monuments that were up could go up on almost every block. I've never seen any figures on how many blocks did or didn't have them, but they were very common. And we started putting them together. George gave us a picture of a monument. These are 2 honor rolls. The ones that are really valuable are the ones you can read the names. And even though we've got too much lighting here, it's a little hard. You can actually read the names on those 2 monuments. We got a monument from Hegewisch where you can read the names. Somebody posted something on our Facebook page that I looked at this morning where they were saying, I wish I could see the names on a particular honor roll monument in Hegewisch. Well, you can't, because the photograph isn't that high a resolution. But we've been putting together information on the honor rolls. There is an album of photographs of honor rolls which we have come across on our Facebook page. I believe the one on the left, George, is that the picture you gave us?
Yes.
On the left. 103rd and Avenue M. Again, you can't read the picture. You can't read the names. That'd be real interesting, but you know, when people took the pictures, they weren't thinking about that. And then the one on the right is fairly common for plants in the area. Companies would post a picture, and they would typically have a gold star and blue star, gold star being the number of people who were killed in action, blue star being the number who are serving. Okay, we've got a number of those as well. Most of your plant honor rolls don't include names, just numbers. But it's kind of an interesting topic. And by the way, we were thinking, we haven't discussed this yet, this was just one of those brainstorms that I had, that in 2 years, 2015, we might use World War II and its effect on the community as our theme, because it will be 70th anniversary of the end of the war. So that might be something we look at and kind of flush out some of the things that affected the community in World War II. We answer, or try to answer, as many requests for information as we can. Now this is kind of interesting. Ostrowski file. I get one of our members, Craig Ostrowski, is a genealogist, and he's also kind of into Polish genealogy, especially the Bush. And he does a lot of research on early cows. So anybody, you know, like the cows that we don't have are typically at the Chicago History Museum. Question came up from somebody, wanted to know if we had any information about a relative who got trapped in Poland at the beginning of World War II. Well, it just so happens that it was one of the papers that Craig copied, and when he copies something, he sends it to me. And then I've got a file, a Daily Calumet. Well, it turns out that if you look on the left-hand side, it's the first article. I got the date, September 14, 1939, about a woman being trapped in Poland. And what happened was she was with relatives and she didn't make the last trip, the last boat trip out before the Germans invaded. Okay, well, she finally was found and located December 20th, 1939. Eventually made it back to South Chicago. But I mean, talk about a picayune little story in history that we were able to locate through the efforts of Craig. Right now it's really neat because he's sending me daily cows from 1885. And then we ran into what we call at the museum the curse of the cows, which is when you're looking for information in the cows, you always get sidetracked because you always find other items of interest. You can't read the cow without reading 5 articles in a particular issue because you know these people. Well, what we came across in that same article about the woman who was stranded in Poland, there was an article about some people from South Chicago who escaped Poland. They were on the last boat out of Poland. So this is the article, and it turns out that one of the names is Zygmunt Charabski, who owned a grocery store in 88th and Houston. Zygmunt is the father of local famous Notre Dame footballer Ziggy Charabski, who actually was the brother of my godmother. So, I mean, you know, so again, we talk small world type things, but here's his father's name in this story about people who did escape from Poland. These, boy, there's terrible, you can't see, the right-hand side is actually kind of a pea green cover, and left-hand side is a blue. It's plant magazines from Press Steel. which was located south of Brainerd Avenue in Hegewisch. They made tanks during World War II. And a while back, one of our members, Tom Florek, obtained 2.5 years of pressed steel magazines. And the great thing is, he scanned them. He didn't give them to us to scan. He scanned them, 2.5 years, plant magazines, page by page, and gave us a digital file. So we don't have the magazines, but we have digital files where we can look into these various stories within this magazine. I don't remember the exact dates. We've got them, we've got them listed. But fantastic resource. And you want to find out and get a feeling for what was going on during the war? What an interesting read these made. One of the expenses on our report was for some items we purchased from the South Suburban Genealogical and Historical Society. They went through and digitized plant magazines from Acme Steel. Acme, also known at various points in its history as Interlake. So we have a collection of plant magazines. Dates are up there. Again, we don't have the hard copies. We get a couple in our collection, but we've got them digitally. So that if you're looking for, somebody worked at Acme or you wanted to know what was going on at Acme, great file. Right now we've got, 3 sets. And they're working, as I understand, they're still working on some additional ones. In fact, they borrowed a couple of copies of magazines which we had in our collection to add to their digital file. So we work with, other historical societies on various things. Cynthia turned in or obtained some files from when the Southtown Star closed their offices. And they were mostly photographs, some hard copies and a bunch of other ones. But there's some very interesting items. These are now all digitized. So we have digital copies of these things. We probably have negatives or in some cases photographs, but we have the digital files. And left-hand side's the Hegewisch South Shore Station years ago. And we had some aerial photographs of Hegewisch as well in the collection. And then lo and behold, going through the collection, we found these pictures. And the Southtown Star came to the museum, did a story on the museum, and had a picture of Alex, Ora, and Frank Stanley from our museum. So it's always interesting, and you never know what you're going to come across volunteering in the museum. So anybody wants to volunteer now, come on over. We got plenty of stuff to do. State line generating station. Jim Oscarello and I had an opportunity to go into the plant the day before they closed. And that's the day before Dominion Energy turned it over to VTU Solutions, which is a demolition company. And they have it now. We went in the day before they closed, so it was not like we had a lot of time. We took a tour, we took a bunch of pictures. I just put up like 4 pictures here from the day we were there. They had a huge hall on the left, sorry for the light again, but the huge hall on the left is where they had that original steam generating turbine, which was a record-breaking turbine that was up for, I think it was up till the 60s before it finally disappeared. That's equipment, switching equipment and stuff. And then we had an opportunity to go up on the roof of that plant and took some pictures on a very clear day. And I mean, we probably took 30, 40 pictures from up there. Great pictures of the surroundings in the area. That's their coal yard and conveyor on the left-hand side. Right-hand side, you can actually see the gay house and the yacht club.
Right. You might chance get a picture of the German swap for the Eagles on the doorway.
No. We knew it was there, we'd look for it. But it was like a whirlwind tour,
It was there all the while I worked there. I worked there for I worked there just before the fire, and I went back working again after the fire. It was still there. Now everybody I talked to wants that.
Yeah, I know.
Where is it at again, sir? It was on the doorway going out from when you stand by the turbines looking out towards the like north. The door.
You know what? Let me look at some of the pictures we took and see if it's, see if you can pick it up.
The 2 Eagles hold the German spot.
Do you think that was put up before the war?
Oh, yeah.
Well, remember the Bowen
Right.
Bowen yearbook, which had swastikas
Which means love.
as a
right?
theme,
Love.
yeah, as a theme in one of their yearbooks, I think 1925. These are some of the pictures, so we were able to rescue some things. That picture on the left, it's lousy, but it's the earliest picture we were able to rescue. The pictures were incredibly bad condition. They were mildewed, they smelled bad, they were just stacked together. We took the pictures out on the porch of the park and cleaned them off by hand. Now, we were told by an archivist, you need a very special vacuum. It only cost about $1,200. And we weren't about to buy a vacuum or do it. We've got them to the point where they're in reasonably good condition. And they are copyable. And we copied a number of them. We could do more. We rescued about 900 pictures. And their construction. So the earliest one, 1928, when they were building the plant, July 31st, that's a picture from of construction. There's an interior, and then in 1931 was in one of their anniversary books. That's after the plant was originally built. The plant was built in stages. They started with Unit 1, which was a big steam turbine, and then they built a Unit 2, and then in the 60s they did another addition where they built those rectangular monstrosity construction that doesn't fit with the original decor. And we have tried to contact that demolition company to get back in, but have not yet been successful. This is an interesting story. One of our members, Tony Arduino, came into the museum and he handed us this brochure. Again, I apologize for the quality. It's not so much quality as it is too much light. But it was a brochure, and it had a picture on it of a dredging team, I think it says Calumet Harbor, but some divers. And look, I says, damn, that picture looks familiar. And it's on a brochure by the Illinois State Archives advertising Archives Month. So I'm looking and saying, that's our picture. So I went to our file and I started looking, and I found the actual snapshot. Not a reproduction, not a Xerox, the actual snapshot. So I know this is our picture, because they don't have that picture. So I contacted them. And this was, on the left-hand side, is the original item that says, okay, here's the brochure for Illinois Archives Month. And I sent them a note, and it's, the president down in Springfield of the organization. And he says, you're right. It's your picture, it's not ours. So they ended up publishing in their next newsletter. So it came out fall of 2011. Spring of 2012, they published a little item. The photograph used was incorrectly cited, and they made the correction. But the important thing, I think, is that a very revered institution now knows we exist. This is something else. We mentioned it in our newsletter, and although we are not a genealogical organization, we do have items that help. We do try to help people in genealogy. Last year, the 1940 census was released. So we kind of highlighted that in one of our newsletters and talked to people about it. Actually, this is the page that has my mother's family. So if you look real closely, that's the little section of the 1940 census. They were living at 8614, I think Marquette. You have to know what page it represents, it's kind of that kind of stuff. But it was my grandfather, who was Joseph, his wife, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids. 9 kids. One of them, oh yeah, there are 2 missing. So I'm looking at this and what's going on here? Well, one of them is my aunt who was married at the time. So I had to find her listed as, under her married name, and I did. And the other one was my oldest aunt, who's a nun. And she was gone from home then, but I don't know how to find nuns in the census. But it's one of those things. I'm not heavy into genealogy. If I was, I'd pursue it. But it's just the information that's available is very interesting. You've got, sex, race, where they lived, are they employed. That's actually a mistake. They show my grandfather is living in Germany. My grandfather was born in this country. His father was an immigrant. And the reason they list Germany is because at that time there was no Poland. So a lot of times when you're doing census research, you'll find people listed as living in Austria or Austria-Hungary, Russia, or Germany, when in fact they're Polish.
What's her last name?
Olenek.
Olenek?
Olenek.
I know some Olenek.
There's a lot of them. This is the other side of the page, which again provides some interesting stuff. This one actually says my grandfather was a steel loader at the mill. I knew he worked at the mill. I didn't know exactly what he did. And then my uncle was a truck driver for a beverage company. That's Canfield's Beverage, if you recall. And my mother actually worked at the same company. And when my father came back from the war, he went to work for Canfield's. Prior to that, he worked in the mill. And if my mother wasn't working at the beverage company, I'm sure he'd have kept working at the mill. So it's kind of interesting how these things all work out. And there's also figures on wages and what they did and all kinds of things. So it's a great resource, and it is available. Census comes out 72 years after it's published. So you only have to wait till 2022 for the 1950 census. We got involved in helping some environmental groups who were fighting against the Chicago Police Department plans to put up a shooting range. And the shooting range would have been right about here. Across the river from the Haglish Marsh, you put an environmental center on one side of the river and shooting range on the other side, next to a landfill. But what ended up canceling that, environmental groups were not doing very well until the bald eagles nested there. And then all of a sudden, the police department canceled their plans. However, I don't think that those plans are dead forever if the bald eagles nest elsewhere. So we got to keep them bald eagles over there. We worked with Rob Stanley, who worked on putting together a Bonneville reunion. And then with the reunion, and also then people start handing us materials that expand our Bonneville collection. We've got an incredible collection on Bonneville. Rob has actually put together a list of over 500 names of people.
About 18 or 19 or something.
People who ever played with the Bonnevils. Probably a couple of liars, because people used to brag about playing with the Bonnevils where they didn't. But
I wouldn't count on that list being completely accurate.
Right, but it's...
I just went by articles, and there's probably people that are listed twice under different names, because when they ask guys like Rod for the newspaper, and Rod would say this guy, and they'd spell it differently, and then the next article would be spelled differently.
Anyway, we had a reunion over at former Club Gizmo. Later the Slide-In, before that Cusick's Tavern. And these are, again, I apologize for the quality, but these are pictures of people at the reunion. That picture top right, unfortunately, just a short time ago, the person second from the left, Joe Basti. I don't know if any of you remember Joe. He was a police officer in the 4th District. Legendary stories of what went on in policing the area, where he used to hide his 3-wheel motorcycle for various activities, and he played with the Bonnevers actually over 2 eras. Yeah, Wake is next week, is it?
Either Tuesday or Wednesday.
I think it's Tuesday.
Tuesday.
They just posted it.
At Elmwood.
Wake is at Elmwood on Tuesday. Picture on the left is a picture of the 1929 Bonnevers. Actually, the earliest picture that was available, and we had this picture reproduced from publications, but at the Bonneville reunion, somebody handed me the original picture, and it's in the museum right now.
Joe DiOrio's daughter.
Right, Joe DiOrio was active with the Bonnevers. That's a different athletic team who probably filled in a gap.
Eddie and Cooney's.
Old Bonnevers.
Eddie and Cooney's, yeah.
Eddie and Cooney's.
Yeah, a lot of those guys eventually played with the Bonnevers.
Right.
And I think Joe Basti's one of the original guys that started it up back in '54.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we came across this roster, which is always kind of neat. They have in the collection. We have been working with Bowen High School, and the Bowen High School a complete set of yearbooks from 1917 to 2005 from Bowman High School. One of them is digital, 1926, but the other ones are all hard copies. We have school newspapers, various states. We work with the alumni on their Hall of Fame. We provided information for dedication to the auditorium class reunions. These are some pictures of notables from the Bowen yearbook. Bill Harlow was a basketball player who was famous for a one-handed set shot. I forget, it's some archaic shot that nobody uses anymore. But in the 1930s, he scored 50 points in a game, which was like unheard of. Giovanni Carmelo Babbo was better known as Gloria Van, famous singer. Eli Gerba, baseball player. Andrew Davis, Hollywood director, made some really big-time Hollywood movies. Louis Rosen is a composer and singer from New York City. He actually performed in Chicago about 2 weeks ago. Neil DeSanto, local activist, I'm sure many of you know Neil. And then that's Gloria Van up there on the left. Joni James was another singer, but we didn't have a yearbook picture. A lot of people attended but didn't graduate, so maybe you didn't get a picture. Gene Krupp is a good example of that. That's Eli Gerba, baseball uniform. Andrew Davis directing a movie. That's a cover from one of Louis' songs, and that's a picture of Neil. We received a donation from the estate of, I forget what the son's name was, but William Rowan, who was an alderman and congressman, actually spent a lot more time as alderman than he did as congressman, two-term congressman. His son passed away, and the family donated an album, and it had articles related to his career in Congress. Actually, an album of articles related to his career as alderman would have been a whole lot more interesting, but we didn't get it, you know. But we got the album, it's kind of neat. And Rowan's one of those names we do recognize, because there's others we don't. A lot of work with authors and books that have been coming out. Port of Chicago, St. Lawrence Seaway is a book that's like somewhere around 1960. That was actually given to us by the Field Museum for helping them with some work, some projects that they were doing. History of the Davis family was a genealogy put together from a guy who came in and did some research in our museum. He actually self-published this book. It's an amazing book. It's that thick. It's glossy. It's extremely high quality. And he actually had it printed himself in China. But he put the book together. We can show it to you in the museum. He gave us 2 copies. But I mean, an unbelievable genealogy. Obviously of interest to his family. Maybe not a lot of interest to other people, but incredible job. We have been working with a guy from he's in California, I forget the exact town. He's a retired college professor, and he's into Mexican baseball. And he does books on California, but he also includes Mexican baseball teams from other areas. So we've been providing him with some photos for his books. He's got 2 of them out so far. We've got a copy in the museum if you're interested in seeing it. He's got a 3rd one coming out and a 4th one planned. And we have provided some pictures for him on things like the Yaquis and the Mayas from this area. Steel Barrio, Great Mexican Migration to South Chicago, 1916 to 1940. Longest title I've ever seen. Written by a guy named Michael Innes Jimenez from the University of Alabama. And about a year and a half ago, he came and he asked us, you know, for if he could find any, if we had any pictures that would help him. Well, I don't know anybody else who's got more pictures on the South Chicago Mexican community than we do. His book is scheduled to be released in a short time. Should be out, I think June. But what I find interesting is this guy's from the University of Alabama. He was born in El Paso. As far as I can see, he doesn't have a Chicago connection. So number one, I would really like to meet the guy and talk to him, but number one, what the hell is a guy from Alabama and El Paso down there doing a book on South Chicago? And number two, what's his take on South Chicago going to be? And of course, this is unlike many books that get done because he's an academic, and academics do things differently. You know, so we're looking forward to that. But I suspect he's going to have 10 or 12 pictures from our collection in his book. Terrorist Next Door. It's a novel. Easy read, fun read. It's about a terrorist in the city of Chicago, but it includes scenes and episodes from this community. The guy's father lives kitty corner from Bowen High School. The last scene in the book takes place at the synagogue on Houston Avenue. And like I say, it's bubblegum reading, real easy. You know, no headache to read that one. Interesting book. Sheldon's a member of our society. We actually took him on a tour of the Southeast Side when he was kind of researching this book. That goes back 2-3 years. And he's written a series of other mysteries that are out. So he's a well-published author. Fireflies in the Jar, Milltown Reverie, Georgia Nejak Kraft. Girl who grew up on the East Side writes a story of growing up on the East Side. I actually kind of had a review on that in our last newsletter. A lot of memories, you know, things that she remembers. And again, easy read. Once Upon a Time in South Chicago by Rob Stanley. I can't tell you how many times I laughed while reading that book. Because Rob tells the stories that are told to him of growing up on the East Side, or in the Southeast Side. And you know people on the Southeast Side are great storytellers. So you got to see that. And he's got a copy up here you can take a look at. Along the South Shore South Bend Rail Line by Cynthia O'Gurek. Cynthia's right over here. She did an Arcadia book. It's actually Cynthia's third Arcadia book. She did one on the Calumet River, one on the Lincoln Highway, and the third one here on the South Shore South Bend Rail Line. Used a few photos from our book, from our collections. And then we've got Exit Zero, which is a book by Christine Wally, grew up on the East Side. Her father was employed at Wisconsin Steel when it closed. And then that has led to several things for Christine. She's pretty much told this story her whole professional career. It's an academic book. It's a good book. It's an interesting book, but it's not an easy read. And then we'll mention what's going on there. That's actually a picture of Sheldon Siegel and Pascal Marco. Pascal, or Pat, is from the East Side, lives in Arizona now. Lousy lighting, can't really tell if that's a cover from Cynthia's book. That's a cover from Rob's book. That's from George's book, Fireflies in the Jar. Steel Barrio. The cover's out. We haven't seen the book yet. It's online. They're selling it already. Exit Zero, and that's where the name comes from for that book. It's the exit at the state line. So the mile marker is 0. And it was thought, it's explained in the book, how that sort of becomes a parallel or a metaphor for the community and what's going on. Now, out of that book comes the Exit Zero Project, which is the book, which we have in the museum. Not for sale yet, you can't get it through Amazon, but we've got a copy. A documentary film and a rough cut is what's going to be shown at the Field Museum on April 13th for the Exit Zero. They can't show a final version because in order to enter it in certain film competitions, the final version has to be released at a certain time. So this is rough cut. Okay. There's actually like an 8-minute trailer from the film available online. And then, so you get an April 13th preview. We are going to sponsor, we don't have it set up yet, but we will sponsor a showing at the East Side Library in June. There is a website, exitzeroproject.org, which hopefully will develop into an extensive website. Latest upside as of 2 days ago, we did not get a MacArthur grant on that project. It's going to be resubmitted. That often happens with grants. You write the grant, you submit it, they say, no, we don't like this, you change it, you resubmit it. So it's still in the works. We'll see what happens. And then there's still an NEH, that's National Endowment for Humanities grant, that is still pending. Idea being that some of those things I've mentioned that we have digitally, we'd like to get online, because they aren't available online. Death notices over the year, unfortunately, Bill Rowan, that was the name of the son of Rowan. Ruhr from the Camera Shop, Lonkar from the Tavern in South Chicago, Frank and Gene Stanley, who were so active with this organization, Ed Krushka, another former member, he's come in here, part of the bocce crew from Calumet Park, Joe Baskey, latest edition. Interesting thing this year, for a long time, I I didn't go down Torrance Avenue because of the construction on the bridge. So I would, come that way. Once they opened the bridge, I came back down and I found something. And it reminded me of this. 2004, the Landmarks Preservation Council designated steel-related sites in this area as being endangered. Blast furnace, Hewlett iron ore unloaders, and quench tower at Acme Steel. Well, blast furnace is gone. It was demolished real quickly. Two pieces from the blast furnace, a large bell and a small bell, are currently at the Pullman State Historic Site. They were rescued, actually, by Calumet Heritage Partnership. Up on top is a picture of the conveyor bridge being exploded into the Calumet River on August 2005. And again, I apologize for the lighting here. The Hewletts, I don't have pictures specifically, because all I've got are pictures of the Hewletts and pictures when they were gone. They were torn down in 2010, and then over this past winter, the quench tower has gone from that wooden structure on the right, it just fell apart. And the only thing that's left is the concrete base. So I mean, it's sort of a sad moment, but all three of those endangered sites are totally gone. Wrapped in Steel, the documentary done by the Southeast Project, was posted on YouTube. So if you want to see that documentary, go to YouTube online. You can watch the entire 90-minute documentary. Last time I checked, there were over 7,200 views of that program. This is kind of a reminder of what we have from the Southeast Project collection. We have archival boxes, which are amazing. I'll tell you a story in a minute about something I found this week. Accession books, which explain the donation. We have a photo exhibit. There are 4,800 images digitized from negatives, 2,100 images digitized from slides. Some of the same, but many are different. We have a ton of really great stuff in that collection. We have a Facebook page. And I know people don't like Facebook, but you can go to our group page and you don't have to mess with any of the other social networking crap that goes on Facebook. You don't have to have friends, you don't have to, do any of that stuff. But we have over 500 members, we have over 500 photos posted. We have discussions, questions get asked and answered, and you can post an event. Here's a question. Somebody posted this picture on Facebook. They says, can you help me? It's a picture of my father. He worked at Southworks, okay? So we were trying to figure out where in Southworks that might be. So I went to a site map for Southworks. This is Southworks in 1910, which we have in our collection. Okay, that's Southworks in 1970. Went through and kind of focused in and came to the amazing conclusion. My guess is it was at 86th and Green Bay, because right across the street are 2 flats, 3 flats. That little building right here is kind of the building I'm thinking that was. Okay, so I had the answer. Then I go through the museum and I find a panel that's got pictures from Wisconsin Steel, and they're that same picture. And it says it's Wisconsin Steel, and it's Torrance Avenue. So then later on, I found an additional copy of the same picture in a Wisconsin Steel box. So I'm kind of leaning towards Wisconsin Steel. Well, then I posted some pictures online related to Wisconsin Steel, early pictures of Wisconsin Steel. Kind of, somebody sees this picture. Okay, it was posted on Facebook. They were originally donated by Alex and Warren Milkowski, both of whom worked at Wisconsin Steel. And then these are the comments that are on the right-hand side. Just stumbled upon this picture posted by Rod Sellers. It's a never-seen-before picture of my dad, Don Marco, when he worked at Wisconsin Steel. Oh my God, this is my father, Dominic Marco. I've never seen this picture before. I was literally left speechless. I was so overwhelmed seeing this. I mean, these are kind of very gratifying things for us.
Yeah, I just talked to Eddie yesterday, who wants to join.
Okay.
And he was very happy about that picture.
I mean, it's just one of those things that, you never know what's going to happen. Somebody else came in, actually a guy who owned this property. And he wanted to know the name of the tavern. He said at 95th and Avenue O. And of course, once we got through arguing about whether there is a 95th and Avenue O, I mean, it's kind of like where 95th and O would be. But anyway, he gave us the address. That's a assessor's photo of the tavern. And we posted the question. Anybody know the name of the tavern? Okay, there.
Joyce's.
Well, see now that name
My
came up.
buddy lived in the house in the back.
So did a bunch of other names. And the problem with taverns, of course, is they change names as time goes on. But what we did find in a 1951 East Side Centennial booklet is the dust jug. Because the guy that was asking the question said that one of the former owners of the property was a Dust. The Dust family had several businesses on the southeast side. Actually, on the left-hand side is that whole column of ads from the East Side Centennial booklet, all of which happen to be related to liquor and taverns. Then we had interesting thing with the White Castle story, we call it. This is a picture of John Barron, who did that diorama in the museum, and it's got a picture of the White Castle on Commercial Avenue. And if you look closely, you see the doors on the left? 10 years ago, some guy comes in the museum, quite inebriated, and he's staring at the diorama and says, "This is wrong." What do you mean it's wrong? He says, "The door was on the other side of the building." I said, "Well, how do you know that?" He said, "Well, because I'd go to Lombardi's, which was a tavern next door, and I'd walk out drunk and roll around the corner right into the White Castle." And I'm thinking, well, how do you argue with logic like that? Well, on Facebook, a while later, we found this picture posted. It's got all the early White Castles, and if you look closely, the one on the second column, Chicago number 5. The 5th White Castle built in the city of Chicago was at 93rd and Commercial, and look where the door is. On the right side. So John Barron and we were wrong, and the drunk was right.
It'd be no Veritas.
Right. And then somebody sent this picture to us and said, "Where did this photo of my great uncle come from?" So I've got the picture, I don't know where it came from. And I recognize the photo, it's from our U.S. Steel collection. It's one of my favorite photos, but exactly where it came from, was still a mystery. So we started looking. And we found a Xerox copy of a 1936 plant magazine from U.S. Steel. We don't have the original, we only have a Xerox. But he was on the cover of the article, and it turns out the article, it's hard to reproduce because the Xerox wasn't that great. But it says, "In tribute to Aaron's sons, whose ready wit and staunch enthusiasm contribute so much to the steel industry." It was about Irishmen working in mills. And then, it's March 1936, and this is the description of the picture. Actually, if you read the whole article, you would say it's not politically correct nowadays, but. And then a recent question, somebody asked about the route of the Lincoln funeral train. And the question was, they recalled seeing an old historical marker, and the way they described it was around 108th and Avenue D. Since I grew up there, I cannot remember that kind of a marker. I don't know. I said, well, let's find out. So we went and I did some research on the route of the Lincoln funeral train, and not without a lot of difficulty, because the Lincoln train went from Washington to New York to Boston to Philadelphia, went through 13 major cities, and then it went from Indianapolis to Michigan City to Chicago to Springfield. So that little section between Michigan City and Chicago doesn't get a lot of coverage. But I was able to find out that it went by way of a different railroad from Indianapolis to Michigan City, and then went through Furnaceville, Porter, Lake Station, Tolston, Gibson. Tolston is what is now Gyre, but there was no Gyre in 1865. Gibson, which is now Hammond. There's a Gibson station.
Gibson Wood.
And then in Illinois, it went to Kensington, and then it joined the Illinois Central tracks and went to downtown Chicago. Calumet City Historical Society. Cynthia was very active in this.
It came through on the Michigan Central Railroad.
Right, it was, so as long as you follow the Michigan Central Railroad, you know the route of the funeral
All the way
train.
from Michigan City up to Kensington, and through Calumet City, Kensington, and then
Right, and that marker is still there.
it
Right.
better be.
Well, okay, it's
built
where
like a
where it
train.
crossed the border, and it was only placed there a couple of years ago.
Where's that?
It's where the Michigan Central tracks cross from Indiana into Illinois.
Well, the marker itself is on the northwest corner of State Street and State Line Avenue in Illinois, Calumet City. The Michigan Central tracks are 2-3 blocks north of that along the river. We didn't want to get too close to the tracks.
So I went, like, over there by the tracks.
Yep.
Find it over there?
Yep, you go back on that horrible road between Strax and the state line and cross over and you'll see it right there on the corner.
So there is a marker, but not where the person who asked the question thought it was.
Oh,
Now, wasn't it James Bowen that was pretty much instrumental in getting?
Bowen was the head of the Illinois Republican Party at the time, and he made the arrangements for the funeral train passing into and through Illinois. This is
Well,
actually,
the reason that it's where it is, the marker, just to go back, is because that property was owned by Stephen Douglas. And of course, he bought it in the 1840s and then he sold it in the 50s to the Illinois Central and made his killing. So part of his property was where Calumet City is.
yeah, and a lot of the accounts of the funeral train mention that they passed by Stephen Douglas' burial place,
Yeah,
which is on the
that's
lakefront.
true.
This is actually,
Read my South Shore book, it tells you all.
these are the Michigan Central tracks coming through Indiana, around the south side of Lake Calumet, into Kensington, and then down into Chicago. So we were able to find a map that showed you real clearly where the train went. And this is from the Calumet City Historical Society story about the placing of the marker. And then, last but not least, this actually came up last week. A while back, Len Kurdek, who's a volunteer at the Polish Museum in Chicago, did a 12-part series on the Joseph Maciek case, which is a young Polish kid who was accused of killing a policeman in 1933, put in prison, later pardoned, found innocent, and released in 1945. It's actually the real story of what later became the movie called North Side 777 with Jimmy Stewart. They give him a different name. It's Vicek in the movie, but it's Maciek. Well, he was not from this area. He was from Bridgeport, back of the yards, but he was Polish, and the Polish community in the southeast side did a lot of work to get him free. So what happened was they had a meeting at a real estate office on 83rd and South Shore Drive to push for his pardon. And then he was pardoned, and his case was handled by Senator Walker Butler, state senator from this area. And then in November, I believe it was, they had an event honoring Butler at the South Chicago Masonic Temple. So this Kurdek sent me, he just got this picture from the son of Maciek. And he wanted to know, number one, could I verify that it was at the Masonic Temple? And I looked at it, and it really didn't look like any of the interior shots I've seen, but we don't have that many. And then secondly, could I identify any of the individuals in the picture? This is Maciek, the pardoned individual. That's Butler, but there's, half a dozen other people. Well, geez, they don't ring a bell. Some of them look vaguely familiar. We might find it, and I posted this on Facebook, but I'm going through our files, and I found a program from the event from 1945. It was weird because I was looking for something else and found the program. And it's got the actual program from that event. So obviously, it's definitely, that it was definitely at South Chicago Masonic Temple. Got a picture of Walker Butler. You can then recognize in the photo, but the most valuable thing is got a bunch of names here, and it's got all these committees of people from the community who worked on this episode. So now it's just a matter of trying to find out if anybody can recognize the people in the picture and match them to the names. by the way, the name Charofsky, Ziggy Charofsky, is up there, but it's the father, not the son. You know, so there's a lot of familiar names. So that's one of those things that we're just getting into, and I just posted pictures on Facebook, which is often a very good way to get answers on questions. And these are just things we think about, you know, our wish list. We need some equipment, which we can probably afford. We do have a healthy treasury. But we are the most frugal spenders you have ever seen. We don't spend money easily. We need space, but you know that's a totally different issue. We are so crowded in the museum. We now have stuff stacked. Going back over old pictures of the museum, I freak out when I see how much space there used to be. Now, in order to get to something, we have to move 3 other somethings. That upstairs area is a disaster because they did some work up there and they destroyed the area. Except we can't go up there now because it's 100 degrees. I might have noticed that the heat doesn't work real well in here, or it works too well. We need to clean the museum. We need somebody who just wants to come in and clean things, dust, sweep some things, you know, things like that. Our display cases and museum layout needs work. Constant work with cataloging and inventorying materials. Expanded hours would be nice, but you know, we're all volunteers. And then we've got the issue of grants, which always comes up. So that's where we're at. Anybody any questions?
Maybe we should talk about that ball field place. Weren't they supposed to build an environmental center or something?
The environmental center was supposed to be at Hagwish Marsh. It's still supposed to be an environmental center, but they had plans for a building, very environmentally friendly building designed by one of the top architectural firms in Chicago, which had gone by the wayside because of lack of money. The environmental center they were going to be working on a documentary. I worked with them on a documentary, provided hundreds of pictures, got 2 helicopter rides out of the deal, and don't know if anything's ever going to happen.
Rod, I have a video of the city officials telling us that it's dead.
Okay.
And that was a year or 2 ago. And that was while they were still trying to preserve Hagwish Marsh until they ran a road right through the preserved space to take care of the reworking of the forest that they're doing.
A lot of it's on hold because of the construction.
A lot of it's being destroyed. A lot of it is being destroyed.
Right, and then it's still supposed to be a green space, but now it's part of that whole Millennium Reserve plan, which is being run by the state.
I also have a video of the state officials saying that will be called the Calumet Reserve. Really, Calumet Reserve is.
Yeah.
And it's also going to be called the Tooth Fairy Reserve too.
Yeah, I mean, the state government gets involved. You know, that property. A lot of those properties were transferred from other owners to the city of Chicago, to the Park District, and now the state's involved. So you figure what's going to happen. It's a mess with that issue.
Saw a couple of references to Hummel Square. Where was that?
Hummel Square, we actually just received a plaque from one of the descendants of Hummel. Ernst Hummel was a early alderman, city treasurer, and businessman. He owned a brewery right on the river at about 100th Street. And his grandson donated a plaque for Hummel Square. Hummel Square was the area where the tank is, and the East Side Memorial was by the mural. It was created when they extended Indianapolis Boulevard from Ewing to Avenue L. And it was actually placed there at the dedication. So we just, within a month, we just received the plaque that was placed there from a relative. And I just came across a box of materials on Hummel that I didn't know we had. It had been donated by a guy who did research on Hummel, genealogical research on the Hummel family earlier.
Rod, did I miss it? Did you say something about what you're going to be doing for the website in the future to get the rest of the documents up, the newsletter?
Right now, the only plans would be something related to Exit Zero, if we get that grant. The other option which we have for a website would be to basically fund our own website, get a domain name, get somebody who hosts websites, design a website, put stuff up. But, you know, and it would have to be something with a lot of memory.
It's a long-term project and a lot of work, but we should have it because we have a lot of stuff that is digitized but not available online.
Getting the website itself, the domain in it is not terribly expensive.
Right,
The rest of the processes, it all depends on what you're going to be doing.
right. Yeah, it's, another one of those things to talk about in the future.
Mhm.
Other questions? Thank you for coming, thank you for listening. Barney, you can do whatever you want to do.
Is there any other topics you want to cover, or pretty well covered?
In case anybody wants an early ticket for the dinner,
How
much is the ticket?
you're $20.
Oh, we have decided, okay, good.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to get your request in the newsletter. And the newsletter coming out will have your,
Yeah, our next newsletter coming out real soon. And it'll have, for ordering.
your resignation.
Is there anything else to cover?
Not that I don't think.
Last year, we adjourned at 12:30. Now it's 12:25, so motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second the
Second.
You second it?
motion. Make a motion, I'll
Second.
Okay. Kevin Murray, second.